All right. Now, part two ended with D-Day, the invasion of France, where we start taking Europe back from Germany. All right. And so part three, this final stretch here from 1944 to the end of the war, we're going to pick kind of back up with D-Day. All right. Remember, it was called Operation Overlord. We went in and took the northern part of France. All right. And it was the United States, Great Britain, and the Canadians. And we all went in, took the northern part, and then we're going to work our way towards Paris and then start working our way towards Germany. All right. Now, throughout the years, there have been lots of movies and so forth made about this invasion. All right. Probably the most famous movie was Saving Private Ryan. And awesome. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's the first 20 minutes of the movie, blows you away, because it really gives you an idea of what it was like the day the invasion happened. Now, in the process of making Saving Private Ryan, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks were the guys that kind of produced it and made it. They ran across this group of the Easy Company of the 101st Airborne, and a lot of them were still alive. All right, so this was in the late 1990s when they were doing this. And so a lot of them were still alive. And at this point, there's hardly any of them left. But back then, a lot of them were still alive. So when they were making the movie, they said, hey, we got to do a story on these guys. Well, they realized they couldn't just do a movie about them. So they did an HBO miniseries called Band of Brothers, and it ended up being unbelievable. There's 9 episodes. Just follows them from basic training all the way to the end of the war. And just super well done. Awesome. All right, Band of Brothers. So if you get a chance, watch it. My favorite episode is the Why We Fight episode, and it's the scene where the Easy Company's in southern Germany and they run across a concentration camp, and they liberate a concentration camp, and it is just gut-wrenching. Just gut-wrenching. And there have been times when I've shown it to students. Obviously, this year is a messed up year, so I don't think we'll get to do that, but great, awesome video. All right, so earlier in this timeline, we showed you a picture of the German troops marching through the Arc de Triomphe. Well, this is, that was in 1939. Well, here it is, 1940. Here the Allies now are marching back through the opposite direction, and we're starting to win the war. And so we liberate Paris and a bunch of other cities: Brussels, Belgium, Athens, Greece, Belgrade, Yugoslavia, Florence, Italy. All right, and so we end up freeing a lot of places. Now, this is again summer 1944. Look what happens. The Germans, or the Soviets, finally make their way into the very eastern part of Germany. Now, go to the next slide. All right, a bunch of stuff. So we're kind of, these first 2 bullets, we go back out to the Pacific. Leyte Gulf is a part of the Philippines, and we finally defeat them there. And when we defeat them at Leyte Gulf, that basically is the last ditch effort for the Japanese Navy. And from this point on, the Japanese Navy is pretty much worthless. They can't stop us, and it's just going to be a matter of when they surrender. Not, if, but when. All right, now, one of the big things that happens in 1944, where you think, hey, we've got this thing won, well, all of a sudden the Germans say, hey, we're not done yet. And so the Germans throw everything they can at the line on the German-French border, and they break through the Allied line and start heading back to Paris again. And it takes 2 or 3 months to stop that. And it's called the Battle of the Bulge because it basically put a big bulge in the line of the Allied line of troops. All right, and a lot of guys got killed in this. A lot of American soldiers. This was our first big where we weren't, super successful during the war. All right, because pretty much when we showed up at the war on, everything we did was pretty good. Well, the Battle of the Bulge was tough, but it was Hitler's. And then once we stopped that offensive, that German offensive, and pushed them back into Germany, that was pretty much it for Germany. They knew they weren't going to win. Now, one of the things, this is the next slide, one of the things in early 1945, when the Russians were plowing their way across Poland, they started running across, and at first they didn't know what they were. They started running across these big camps or prisons, and turns out that these are concentration camps. And what ends up happening is the Germans liberate them. And the big one that they liberated, the worst, awfulest of all these camps, was Auschwitz-Birkenau. It's at the same location. And there were literally millions and millions of Jews that were put to death here. And when the Soviet soldiers came across it, it was gut-wrenching for them. What they found, dead bodies, all the, it was horrible, horrible situation. All right, and so they started liberating the concentration camps, and the Jewish people were so happy, obviously, when they, were free. Now, also in early 1945, Douglas MacArthur is going to make his way back to the Philippines, and he is going to, like he promised, I shall return. Well, here he is returning. This is a famous picture of him on one of those marine landing craft walking the shore on the Philippines, taking the island back. It's a really famous picture. That's in pretty much every textbook ever printed. All right, now, last big meeting of these three happens at Yalta. And Yalta was a resort town in southern Russia, right on the Crimean, on the Black Sea. And basically they start to discuss what Europe's going to look like after the war. They, no one surrendered yet, but they know it's just a matter of time. All right. And so again, the big three: Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin. And at this point, Roosevelt is very, very sick, very, very weak, and he dies right after this meeting happens. All right. So this is the last time these three men are going to meet. The next time they meet is going to be after the German surrender at Potsdam, and Harry Truman's going to be the president of the United States at that meeting. All right, so let's move on. Now we go back out to the Pacific. We take two big Japanese strongholds that we needed to really break them were on the islands of Iwo and Okinawa, and to take both those islands was horrifically tough, but we ended up coming out successful. A lot of good movies about these two too, as well. One of the more recent ones is called Hacksaw Ridge, and it's really good, really awesome video. And again, the Battle of the Bulge ends. Again, we're getting into that, late spring of 1945, and the Soviets reach the outskirts of Berlin. So now Hitler knows he's in trouble. Okay, and so then we start getting to the middle of, May, June 1945. The German soldiers start surrendering. We, the Allies, the United States and Great Britain, we start coming into Germany from the west. And when we start working our way across Germany, we start liberating concentration camps as well, Buchenwald and Dachau. Now, I've been to Dachau, and you talk about a place, it just gut-wrenches you. The whole time I was there, I had a bad like pit in the middle of my stomach. I felt horrible. And it really ruined the rest of my trip to Munich because I couldn't get that Dachau visiting that out of my mind. So if you ever get to Munich, Dachau is on the northern side of Munich. Go see all the stuff first and then go to Dachau. And so finally, this is a famous picture of U.S. and Soviet troops meeting at the Elbe River. Right there, the Elbe River runs through Berlin, and that's pretty much the end of the war. All right. Now, April 12th, our beloved President Franklin Roosevelt's going to die. Harry Truman's going to take over. The Soviets capture Berlin. Hitler's going to kill himself. And shortly after that, in May, Germany's going to surrender. Okay, and so, you know, the European part of World War II is over when Germany surrenders. You know, big celebrations, VE Day. As a matter of fact, VE Day was just, you know, a couple days ago. And I have friends that live in England, and they do a pretty big celebration on VE Day in England every year. It's a big time, you know, day of celebration, even, you know, now 60, 70, 80 years later. All right. So finally, trying to get the Japanese to surrender. They won't surrender. We have now developed and tested the atomic bomb. So on August 6th, we drop the first of our, we had 3 atomic bombs. We made 3 of them. We tested one at the Trinity site out in New Mexico. And then we dropped the second one that we dropped on Hiroshima. It was nicknamed Little Boy, and they were all shaped differently. But it was called Little Boy. And it completely destroyed the Japanese industrial city of Hiroshima. All right. And we begged the Japanese to surrender August 6th. So we said, "You ready to surrender?" And the Japanese said, "Nope, we're not surrendering." Well, then 3 days later, August 9th, we drop another atomic bomb on Nagasaki. And then finally the Japanese surrender. Now, if we wanted to if our goal was to just kill millions of Japanese people, we would have dropped the bomb on Tokyo. All right. But our big thing was, let's attack their industrial base. All right. And so Hiroshima and Nagasaki were big industrial towns. And so we were trying to put a hurt on their economy, so their ability to make weapons for war. That's what we were trying to stop. And so on August 14th, 1945, the Japanese surrender, and that's the official end of the war. Big, massive celebrations all over the world. 4 years of death and destruction, over 60 million people killed. Europe is basically wiped out. Japan is basically wiped out. I mean, the destruction that World War II caused, unprecedented. All right, and so the war's over. So August 14th, Victory in Japan Day, VJ Day, Victory in Japan Day. It is a big celebration, and the war is now over. Now, just because the war ends doesn't mean everything's far from cool, because we're going to go straight from World War II pretty much into a Cold War with the Soviet Union over the spread of communism. All right, so the end of the war just really was the start of another big event. All right, and we'll get to that later on. All right, that's all I got for you. All right, finish up that Google Doc. Remember, the underlined words are the key, and we'll talk to you later.